tech with us today. So if you are online, the handout, actually I need to upload the handout. I got it last night. So it will be up there in a few minutes. And it's on banddirectorstalkshop.com, the very first article. And I'm going to let, is it Dr. Lough?
Mr. Lough.
Mr. Lough introduce himself, tell you a little bit about himself, and then tell us a whole lot about Trumpet.
All right, well, thanks for letting me come and present today. I was saying to the people that were here a little bit sooner, this could kind of go any direction that you want it to. So if you have a question about something that's going on, or a question that you'd like me to, kind of engage discussion about, just feel free to ask, because I want it to be the most meaningful for you that it can possibly be. So my name is David Lough. I grew up in Canyon. I graduated from Canyon High School. I went to WT. I was trained by WT band directors. My private lesson teachers were WT teachers. I stayed on for a master's degree. The plan was to go on and work on a doctorate after that, but there was an opening at Canyon when Steve Baird passed away, and I filled in for the rest of the year after that and fell in love with teaching band. And so I ended up kind of changing the plan and applied for that job and taught there for about 8 years. Somewhere along the way, I decided I wanted to do something different, and didn't know if I would get back into teaching. I still wanted to play the trumpet and do that kind of thing. Then COVID happened and the world went crazy. We had some family stuff happen in that time, and slowly I started teaching trumpet lessons again, and ended up just a few years ago starting teaching at Amarillo College, teaching trumpet there. And then when they added this extra position for a second trumpet at WT, I threw my hat in the ring and really feel fortunate to have been offered that job. So I'm starting that in the fall, teaching alongside Bill Tackus, and so our goal is to grow the trumpet studio, and I'm really, really excited about all that. So that's kind of my story. Let's get going. So what was suggested that I start with is just talk through, here's how I started beginners whenever I was at Canyon. My thinking when I started teaching, I kind of inherited trumpets, and so I learned a lot from dealing with trumpets that I had not started. But as the next year started, I had to start thinking, okay, what am I going to do to get them set up to where they have tone, flexibility, range, endurance down the road? I was thinking like high school all-region auditions. Like, they need to be able to do that stuff when they get to that point. So what do we need to be doing now to make sure they can do that? And what was valued to me as a trumpet player was trying to establish ease of playing, beauty of sound, flexibility comes from that, range comes from that. Like, everything spawns from creating a beautiful sound in an efficient way. And so as the years went on and I tried different things, I kind of finally decided I've got to come down on something and make a system that I can rely on, and then I'll tweak that system as I go. So I ended up, I was pretty influenced by Will Strider's teachings at Texas Tech, and he uses a lot of toys and tools to try to get things going. I have never had a lesson with Will Strider, but I did hang out with one of his students a lot, and got a lot from that. That kind of took me in that direction. And so I really value kind of tricking students' bodies into working correctly to play the trumpet using things that are not playing the trumpet. And so what ended up happening is a lot of stuff with straws and mouthpieces and different things, pinwheels and all kinds of fun stuff. And since then, I've got even some other things that I try. But I try to only use what's necessary to help the student with whatever they're struggling with. So when we would start the year out, and this is really important to the whole process, I feel like, is creating an environment, or making sure the students have an environment where they feel safe to risk. And if they're not safe to risk, they won't try the things you're asking them to try, because they'll halfway do everything. I'm only going to do this enough where I won't embarrass myself whenever I do it wrong. And so we have a lot of fun. I tried to have a lot of fun kind of making fun of myself, and we would kind of laugh when something funny would happen, but never add a student just at the situation or whatever. But I would tell them to their face, look, I want you to be in a situation where you feel safe to try your best, and if you miserably fail, it's okay, because that's how we learn. And so setting up that environment when they're trying something totally new that they've never done before is incredibly important with beginners, I felt like. And I feel like it paid off a lot in terms of building relationships with students, where they were willing to go, okay, you want me to do what? Yeah, I'll try this. So I want to say that first before we get into the what we would actually do. As a teacher, you have to be really, because you guys are all veteran master teachers, you have to get creative with what's going to get students motivated and interested in what you're doing. So some of these steps that I'm going to go through, they're not the most exciting thing in the world. So you have to have fun and be creative about how to make it interesting for them, make it a game, do all that kind of stuff. I'm not really going to talk about that kind of side of things because that's kind of up to you to kind of figure out how to make it fun. Okay, first thing we would do. We would work on posture. And I'm just going to go down this list through what we would do so I can get through it, and then we can kind of go through discussion if we have anything. Posture is incredibly important because we get beat to death talking about air usage and posture and all this stuff, but posture is vitally important for how the human body works. And in recent years, I feel like posture should be simplified, not complicated. And the important thing is that, one thing, it's that the sternum is up. If the sternum is up and we're sitting up tall, that pretty much opens everything up to where it works the way that it needs to. This is kind of taken from Claude Gordon's teachings. He was a student of Herbert L. Clark. The chest being up facilitates good air usage, and it takes care of most problems. Because if you do that, if you just tap on your breastplate and feel that part of your body, when you breathe in, it should be up. When you exhale, it should be up. If it collapses down, we're creating tension and we're creating compression in the wrong kind of way. What we want to do is breathe in and exhale. So posture is really important for that reason. So we make sure everybody knows how to sit in their chair because we're usually sitting when we're doing this kind of stuff. The next thing would be the breath in. So the breath in has got to be relaxed as the breath out is going to be relaxed too. And so I don't complicate it at all. I just say chest up, breathe in. Chest up, fill up. I actually have a board in my practice room at home that says chest up, fill up. I look at it while I'm playing because if I forget that, it makes trumpet playing harder. It's really important that we don't discount the importance of taking in a good breath. So the next part is the exhale, and we just train them. Okay, when you're letting the air out to play the trumpet, we need to exhale the air. Everybody try this. I want to experiment. I don't know how this is going to go. If I tell you to breathe in and blow hard, what happens? Ready? Here we go. Okay, now, cool. Some great air in here. If I tell you breathe in and exhale, what happens? Now, I want you to pay attention to what your face did between those two. Breathe in and blow hard. Tight. How many of you tightened up your face? Okay. That's a really important idea, I think, because when we present the idea that we blow the trumpet with fast air or hard air, if we indicate in any way that it's work to get the air out, the face will react by trying to create resistance, and the students will tighten up. And they'll usually tighten up in the wrong place. We do have to have some structure to what's going on, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's an important idea to play on the exhale. And the second part of that is that the exhale has got to be sustained. And so we have to train them how to sustain the exhale. I'll kind of demonstrate something here. So I've got a straw and a pinwheel. And I didn't do this necessarily as part of the steps. How many of you have seen the video that I put out that kind of goes through this stuff? On the front of the front page of this, it kind of tells you how to find that video. And it kind of breaks all this stuff down. It way over explains everything probably, but that's at the, I did that on purpose so that hopefully you would have less questions about what's going on. Okay, students, when they exhale, you notice when you did this too, it's like we run out of air. As we run out of air on the exhale, the air slows down. And what we want to do when we're playing an instrument, any wind instrument, is sustain the air. So if we want to exhale and sustain the air, the students have to figure out how to do that. They've never done something like that before with their air. They just exhale and it slows down. So I probably would add this step into it. I mean, if you could find some pinwheels, it's a really good visual. And you can actually hear the pitch of the pinwheel too. If I blow softer, the pitch goes down. If I blow stronger, the pitch goes up. And so what we want to do is sustain a pitch on an exhale. From the start to the finish of the breath. And they need to learn how that feels, because when we play on the instrument, that's how we play. And how many of you've probably experienced this with your beginners, you'll start out and they'll play their note and it just kind of dies away at the end. How many of you have experienced that before? It's not every kid, but some kids will do that. And so those kids, you've got to make sure, hey, you need to sustain the air. So you don't let up on that idea, because they can't succeed at anything after that. And that's probably something like each step builds into itself. So if they're not getting one of these things, they're going to struggle on something later. So don't skip steps, not necessarily these steps. If you feel like any of these steps that you're using are not actually doing anything, then save yourself the time and move on. But I kind of like I'm like super anal about the approach with the trumpet, and so I feel like they're really important. Okay, so small straw is not a copy straw. So small straw is how we're going to align the air pathway, the wind tunnel. Like you could call it lots of different things. But the small straw is like one you would get, I don't know how many millimeters that is. It's smaller than a tapioca straw and it's bigger than a coffee straw. It doesn't really matter. But the reason I use this straw is because it gets the teeth open, it gets the tongue nice and low, and we've got a straight line from the throat all the way out of the instrument through the lips. And that naturally aligns the hole between the lips, it aligns the hole between the teeth with each other, and you've got an airstream sitting on top of the tongue. And even better if they have a pinwheel where they've got the goal of keeping this going. And I didn't use this step whenever I was teaching. I just thought about that recently, and I was like, why not? But the straw should be either parallel to the floor or slightly below. If you're up, there's some kind of alignment issue going on, or you've got some dental issues. It is possible that students have a severe overbite or an underbite, and that's where you have to look at the student individually and go, okay, maybe we need to tweak these things for you specifically, and there you go. So that's part of the routine, is just getting the air moving straight ahead. And whenever I play the trumpet, I feel like I have that going on. It's just like 1-to-1. Okay. When I go higher, obviously the tongue is going to rise, and we'll talk about that more later. Always blows, so it's still step 1, breathing, exhale, small straw, all that stuff. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is get into the visualizer. And if you came in towards the beginning, I 3D printed enough of these that you could probably take, just a second. You could probably take 1 or 2 of these, but you're going to get to go home with some of these things.
Yeah, sorry to stop you. How far are you telling them to put that straw in?
Oh, thank you for asking that. So that actually goes on the top of the tongue, as far back without choking them. So, and this is back here. If you don't put it back far enough, thank you for asking that, because if you don't put it back far enough, then you can't be sure that the wind tunnel is aligned. That's a great question. So I say kind of like a tongue depressor at the doctor's office. Okay, and I don't even talk about the embouchure. They'll kind of figure that part out. And at this point, later we'll talk about embouchure. But right now we're just worried about air alignment. Okay, thank you. Next thing we do is visualizer. And when I was doing this, I used PVC couplers. If you can get something that's shorter, this is better because you'll be able to see the aperture easier. But this is just a matter of getting something round on their lips that they're blowing through. And the thing that I would always tell them is keep it the same. If your air was blowing straight with the straw, keep it the same in this situation too. So that step is still happening, and this goes on the face. And this is where we might talk about kind of rim placement. We need to make sure that the top of the rim and the bottom of the rim are on skin, not vermilion. The vermilion is the lip tissue. Okay? This is extremely important if you want them to have range in the long term, because the vibrating surface needs to be that vermilion, not the softer spongy tissue. I don't know what that's called. Anybody know what that type of tissue is called? Like on the inside of the mouth, that stuff. If they are vibrating with that as their vibrating surface, they will have tone problems, they'll have range problems, they'll have sound problems. It just won't work. We've got to use the lip tissue, the vermilion, as the vibrating surface. So skin and skin, top and bottom. And we want it to be about 50-50 in terms of like where the aperture is setting. That's kind of a general thing. It could change. There are great trumpet players who have a really high setting of the mouthpiece and a really low setting. For students that are just starting out, why don't we just start them in the middle and then see where it goes from there? I mean, that's the best start that we can give them. So I think that's a 1-inch PVC coupler, if you want to write that down. I don't know. But they're super cheap. They're dishwasher safe and all that stuff. I would definitely wash them before you pass them out to students. But if you don't have some kind of visualizer ring, like with just a rim on a stick kind of thing, then this will work, and that's what I use. But here's what we do with this. So once we get it placed, 50-50 and 50-50, it's just a matter of blowing. We are not going to buzz. We're just blowing air through that, and we're trying to keep that straight line approach of the straw idea. And I haven't tried this. You might be able to do both. You could, I don't know. Yeah, so you could experiment with that and see if that works. You could even do the thing where you pull the straw out. This is a big straw to be pulling out. The danger with this is that it unfurls the lips as you pull it out. If it sticks to it, it'll like make the lips pooch out. But, so that's that step. The lips should be, when we're doing embouchure formation, we can talk more specifically about that, but embouchure formation, yes?
There's a question online. I'm wondering if you could share the 3D print file. Is that yours? Do you own
Yeah, I totally could.
it? If you can share it with me, I can upload it near your handout.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Thanks whoever asked that. I'll totally do that. Okay, embouchure formation. I don't know that I talk about this very much because I want them to find it more naturally, but if I notice there are issues, I'll start dealing with it. So embouchure formation, we're going to say dim. Everybody can try this with me too. Dim. Dim. Corners are going to hug the eye teeth, like the canine looking teeth right there. Are those the eye teeth? Okay. The corners are going to gently hug that, and that gives structure to the embouchure, but the middle is going to stay relaxed. So when you flex that or hug the corners of the mouth, you should still be able to like speak. So my corners are flexed right now. I can still say my name, and I can like. So you might have students like speak while they're doing this, so that we get nice and supple and relaxed in the middle. And then the last step, which I think is really important, and I don't think a lot of people think about this, it's blowing the air straight ahead. If the air is blowing down, that means that the top lip is over the bottom lip. That is not good on trumpet. And I might get in a fight with people for saying this. I don't mean to. This is my opinion, but I feel like it's correct. If the top lip is over the bottom lip, we are inhibiting vibration of the bottom lip. If the bottom lip is over the top lip, we're inhibiting vibration of the top lip. We need to have both lips be even, and that's going to facilitate high range. Your students who struggle with high range, if you tell, and this trick works like short term, but in long term, their range, it peaks out immediately after whatever note they can hit with this. But if you say, blow your air down, which I have done this with students, blow your air down. It might, for the short term, help them get that one E or E flat or F or whatever at the top of the staff that you want them to get. But in the long term, they're going to top out because they're going to do more of that to go higher. And that is not conducive to good trumpet playing. If I want to play high, I've got to use the air moving straight through the instrument, and I've got to have the lips, which is a double reed. Our lips are a double reed. We've got to make sure that they're even. You don't change an oboe reed to be top lip, or top reed over bottom reed or whatever. It's very similar in a lot of ways. I don't know if the scope of this time frame we could even get into that, but if we just keep everything flat and even and aligned, top lip and bottom lip aligned, we've got range without really trying. If I start trying to take the top lip over the bottom lip to play high, I can get it, but it's a lot more difficult. Actually was surprised at how that came out, because my lip was like literally on top. I mean, I look like, what's the Muppet that's the eagle, the American Eagle guy? And he's got that Sam. Yeah, Sam. Okay. So I feel like my lip is kind of doing that. So it's really important that we keep the lips somewhat even with each other as we're ascending and descending. So anyway, I'm getting kind of off the reservation on the thing here. Okay, so we did this thing. Okay. And then the next thing is going to be, this builds into us doing the mouthpiece. And so we're going to take, oh, it's on my trumpet. We're going to play the mouthpiece. And when we play the mouthpiece, we don't buzz. Because as soon as we buzz, we introduce extra tension that is unnecessary to play the trumpet. How many of you have heard something about no buzz? Okay, and there's differing opinions or whatever. The issue with that is, if you want to play the mouthpiece, you obviously have to buzz. If you don't play the mouthpiece and you just want to play the trumpet and you just want to blow air until the lips start to vibrate naturally, that's the no buzz. There is definitely vibration happening in the mouthpiece. So don't get confused about that when people saying there's no buzz. There's definitely oscillation. That's how we create the standing wave that creates the sound. Okay, so for the students, top finger and a thumb, that's all we need to use. We're going to keep the straight line approach just like the straw, so it's parallel or slightly below parallel, and we're just going to blow air just like we do every step before it. If I notice there's no engagement, I might tell the students, hey, corners of your mouth, hug your teeth, but keep the lips in the middle relaxed. Okay? And so then, the next exciting part is when they get to make their first sound on something. And I didn't say this at the beginning, but the whole point of all of this is that we're avoiding making a sound, and we're trying to help them create the sound. You know what I mean? A sound is not flexible. It doesn't have range. It doesn't have tone. They might luckily find it, but that's pretty rare in my experience. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we've got the mouthpiece. Let's see. I had to think about this. This is like holding the trumpet, and we're going to do this with the trumpet in a minute. So this is a tapioca straw. I actually found some on Amazon that are like rewashable and stuff. They're like really solid, and they work great. There are different lengths of them too. So I think, I don't know, whatever the middle length, it doesn't really matter. It just makes the fundamental tone lower the longer it is. But you can experiment with which one you like. I should find out what length this is so that you know, because it's very similar to the trumpet lead pipe. Okay, so we're going to do this thing. And we get a vibration, and it's free and it's open. The advantage to using this versus starting on the trumpet is that we don't have a harmonic series that we have to find resonance on immediately. Okay? This does have resonance, and there is a fundamental tone and a harmonic series on this thing. But the important thing about this is that they have a lot of freedom to find freedom of vibration without having to be in the center of a certain frequency. So, I'm not doing anything different. I'm just blowing air through relaxed lips that are straight across through the middle of the mouthpiece. How many of you have seen something like that before? Lead pipe playing is from William Adam, the famous trumpet teacher. That was a really cornerstone of his teaching. So there you go. Greg Spence also advocates for this kind of thing. He's an Australian trumpeter who played in the Australian Dancing with the Stars. He now has a website that you might want to write down. It's called mysterytomastery.com. It's a really good resource for this kind of concept of using the air to create the sound rather than having a buzzing mindset about playing the trumpet. Again, there's definitely oscillation, but we're not trying to make oscillation. We're trying to move air and then put the lips in the right position in the way of the air, and then they move freely. Okay, so once they're able to do that, they're all excited because they get a sound, right? You see my lip? It's kind of hard, people are in the back, but if it's one-to-one, if I just take the mouthpiece away, there's no buzz, there's no tension, it's just tone. That's resulting of the resistance and the standing wave being created by the oscillations of the air. There's a hole, but the hole is elongated kind of like a football. It's like this, an American football. So this is the shape of the aperture. That looks a lot like what other instrument? It looks like an oboe reed or a bassoon reed, or maybe, I could be wrong, I was thinking a flute aperture. So aperture is aperture. Ours is vibrating. Theirs is directing the air. It's really similar in a lot of ways. There are some differences. So there you go. All right. Once we can do that, they're all excited. So we call this the plastic trumpet with students, and they like playing their plastic trumpet. And so once they're able to do that freely, we go through the steps every single day. By the way, we haven't articulated yet. We're still just using breath attacks. Okay. Once they can do that, it's just about creating a free vibration. And there's the resonance. You can hear that actually has some resonance to it. If I bend it around, you can hear. That's about as loud as I can play. If I blow as hard as I can, I'm out of the center of the resonance, and so therefore the sound doesn't carry. I'm kind of like the horn is fighting me. I can get a lot more sound when I'm in the center of resonance, and so they can start to feel that, and that's kind of in the vein of the William Adams school of teaching with lead pipe playing, and I don't want to get into that. I'm not a William Adams student, so I shouldn't probably be invoking his name, but it's good stuff. Okay, so then after they can do that, we're going to start getting into being able to manipulate frequency. And so we'll go high to low. We're moving away from the resonance, but it's still more advantageous than doing it on the trumpet at this point because there's still a lot more freedom. So, oh, sorry, I moved down and then moved up. Don't do that. Just move down. What I would tell the students is stay loud the whole time. So and that'll help them keep the idea of keeping the air moving, because a lot of students will go and they'll try to go down by weakening the airstream. We don't want to go down by weakening the airstream. We want to keep our foot on the gas pedal as we go downhill on the trumpet. That's an idea from James Stamp. The Stamp exercises, that guy. He would tell his students that. So the rules about going down are keep the air steady, keep the jaw still, do not move the jaw, keep the embouchure steady. The embouchure, I'm going to get into stuff that I can't finish talking about, and I don't want to confuse anyone. The embouchure needs to remain stable. It is not necessary to tighten or loosen the lips drastically to change pitch. Kind of in that oboe reed mentality. We don't change the oboe reed to play high notes versus low notes. Now, I realize the science is different because of the keys and how that stuff works, but it's still kind of the same mentality. What I want to do is I want to change the airstream, but I don't want to change the blow of the air. I want to change things some other way. So does anybody know what we could change that's not the embouchure, not the jaw, and not the actual blow of the air?
Your tongue?
Your tongue, yeah. So the vowel shape.
Your tongue.
Your tongue, my tongue, your tongue too if you're doing it. So yes, the tongue is vitally important in control of frequency. We don't have to talk about the science of it, but it totally works. If I tighten the lips to go up, I'll do it on the trumpet. So the idea that tightening the lips makes you go higher. I'm not going to move my tongue. I'm not going to change my jaw. I'm not going to change my air. I'm only going to tighten my lips. Somewhere in there, you've heard a sound like that in your band hall. Okay. That comes from tight lips. The lips have to be loose and vibratory and just receive the air in a passive way. And so that's what we're trying to do with these steps, is teach them to let the lips be loose in the middle. So what I think of is soft in the middle, structure on the outside, and then the air powers everything. Okay. So if I want to go higher, I can combine the air, the tongue, and possibly tensioning out here a little bit, and I can go up. Okay? So we're able to go up when we combine all those things. And I call that the machine. The machine works together. If it's got one component that's not working right, it won't work right. But the air's got to work with conjunction of the tongue, and that's got to work with in conjunction with the function of the embouchure. Okay, let me finish this beginner stuff out. We could go back to that idea if you want to, because I know range is something. I mean, you can only play certain literature in your band programs if your trumpets can't play high. So okay, so the next thing we're going to do is do high, low, and then we teach them how to go back to high. Oh, I didn't finish the idea about the tongue. So the tongue moving lower into an opposition goes lower. That corresponds with going lower, while we're keeping all other things equal. Like the embouchure is stable, the air keeps blowing forward. If we want to go back up, we keep the air blowing forward, and we don't let the air change, and we allow the tongue to rise, and we go back up. I didn't know how to describe that to my students when I was teaching full time. It is really difficult to understand, or to have a way to say how you go down and how you go up without saying the wrong thing. Because it's real easy to go, well, you just loosen your lips to go down and you tighten your lips to go up. Well, that's going to create all kinds of problems. They're going to go with that to the extreme in the wrong direction. But what really is happening is the air is powering things. The tongue is manipulating and narrowing the passage of the airway inside the mouth. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to get attacked by people for saying this, but I believe that the Bernoulli principle is in play here, which drives the air faster in that more narrow passageway. And if you attach that narrow passageway to the lips by keeping the tongue forward as it arches up, then the air is going to go faster and the note's going to go up. The frequency is going to go higher because the lips are passively reacting to whatever the air is doing. But it's still a combination of air, tongue, embouchure structure, and the lips being supple. Any questions about that? Okay. If you go down that rabbit hole of the Bernoulli principle, good luck. there's a lot of conflicting information about whether that's actually at play or not. Check this out. Here's an experiment that you could show your students in the importance of keeping your lips flexible and supple whenever you're blowing. So this is an experiment that I found on a physics channel dealing with the Bernoulli principle. So if I blow my air between these two pieces of paper, what do you think will happen? Why? Thanks. Okay. Do you already know that, or you just okay? Sweet. That's awesome. So, okay. The reason that's happening, this is why the lips vibrate. The lips vibrate for two reasons. It's because the lips are rubbery springs that want to return to their original position. Okay. Coupled with the idea of the Bernoulli principle, which says when the air pressure between two objects, or in a tunnel or whatever, when that air pressure lowers, the air pressure around it is going to push those objects back together. That's why the paper comes together. I blow the air pressure lowers inside there, the air pressure out here is greater, pushes them together. Well, that's happening inside the mouthpiece. As we blow air, the lips open, and the pressure equalizes, and then they close again. And it's happening over and over at a very high frequency. And whatever frequency that's happening at is whatever pitch we get on the trumpet. And if that happens to correspond to a resonance on the trumpet, or a harmonic on the trumpet, we get an in-tune, beautiful sound, if the lips are vibrating freely. Okay. Too sciencey probably, I'm sorry. But I think it's important to, just for illustrating how important it is that the lips are supple and relaxed. Okay. I think that's it, right? We went high, low, high. And we're good. So then, at that point, or at some point in there, I think I skipped articulation. We're going to teach them how to articulate, because we want to have that happen at the beginning of every note. So the thing that I start out with articulation, I go back to the straw, and I put the straw between the teeth, and we're going to cover the hole with the tip of the tongue. Okay? It's covering. Now, close the mouth, blow air. Nothing will happen, because it's blocking the airway. Move the tongue out of the way into that ah position that we've already established, and we've got articulation. I teach beginners tip tonguing, which means the tip of the tongue goes right between the teeth, and that's what we're setting up by having the straw right there. And that's it. So the tongue works in retrograde, which means the sound starts when we pull it away, not whenever it attacks. So there's a sequence of events that happens, and I call it tongue blow release. I don't like the word blow, but I can't think of an easier, better word that describes what's happening. So if you think of one, let me know. So TBR, we're gonna put the tongue in the way, we're gonna blow air, then we're gonna pull the tongue out of the way in that sequence. And we do it two ways when I'm teaching the beginners. We do it a stupid way, or a silly way. I shouldn't say stupid. I do it a silly way, and we do it the real way. The silly way is to literally stick your tongue out of your face. Go. And they understand the sequence of events. We know that we don't protrude the tongue through the lips when we articulate, but it's going to go to the point where we're sealing the air completely, wherever that is, without protruding through the lips and affecting the aperture negatively. We're going to do that, pull it away, we get a sound. And we always get a clean sound when we do that right. If all things are set up to have a sound. I mean, you'll probably hear it because their aperture's too tall, or you'll hear it because they've reverted to being too tight again. So it's just a daily game of managing all those concepts and not letting anything slide. If you let anything slide when they're learning to play the trumpet, like if you just we'll figure out how to do that later, you're kind of setting yourself up for difficulties later, because they're ingraining habits right off the bat. And that's the whole idea behind all of this is, if you're being really attentive to how they're doing each of these things, building into each other, they're going to experience success more easily. That's the theory anyway. But you can't make concessions. I mean, and that's hard to do, because the kid wants to get it, you want them to get it, and you get impatient or they get impatient, and that's where creativity and making things fun and developing that environment of let's keep working, let's keep trying. Sometimes it's going to take a week, sometimes it's going to take a couple weeks for you to feel like you're doing this better. But just in the act of doing each of these steps every day, it's the first 5 minutes of class. Once we're able to do all these steps, it's the first 5 minutes of class, and before we get to the trumpet. Now, when we get to the trumpet, we're just connecting everything. And because they can go this, they have the ability to find resonance on the trumpet now and center the resonance on whatever harmonic they're trying to play. They may not find it right off the bat. You hear that sound sometimes for a first sound because they're in the middle of the harmonic series instead of locking in. Or you hear and they're on the high side of the harmonic. That sounds pinchy. The problem with pinchy is that could be tight lips or that could be off the center of resonance. You kind of have to experiment to find out where that is, and they do, like one kind of helps the other work better. But when they're starting, you can do the thing with the trumpet alone and add the trumpet. And you're building into that where they still realize, hey, we're creating a sound accidentally. It's a passive reaction to the air. And then you put everything together. So I think you can kind of fill in the gaps from there. But that's the process, and it takes days to get through that. And while I'm doing those things, we're working on music literacy things, like we're starting to read rhythms, we're learning how to tap our toe, we're doing other things unrelated to playing the instrument that they still need to be learning. So it fills up the class time where they don't feel like they're just doing the same thing over and over.
Would you play the rhythms with the tapioca straw?
Yeah, sure. You totally could. Once they know how to articulate, I would be careful about doing anything rhythmic until they can articulate, just because it's going to establish better rhythmic time and a definite starting place. So all of those things, all of those steps is just breathe, go. I don't have them do that in time until they're ready, because I don't want them thinking about multiple things. And I could see the argument for doing things in 4 counts every time you do something, but you run out of air really fast on a straw like that. Yeah, a 6th grader is going to struggle keeping the air moving in a consistent direction for that long. So that's the issue with that too.
There was an online question back about the tongue. They said to adjust the tongue to get lower sound, you're moving the tongue lower, question mark. Someone else said like eh to ah. Do you agree?
Yes, so the vowel sounds that I would tell the students is O or ah for low notes. As we move up, we're moving up into E or eh. We're moving up into, as we go up higher, it's even higher, E, E, E. As we get into the extreme range, we start going into kind of a hiss. So it's ah to hiss, and it goes, but that's like super extreme, like above high C. So that's like double G right there. So
then someone also asked, do you ever use mouthpiece buzzing as the students develop to get the matching pitch with the whole band?
I didn't, because I don't think there's anything wrong with it if you're mouthpiece buzzing correctly. But I felt like for me, I felt like it was maybe an unnecessary step. I can't believe a trumpet player said mouthpiece buzzing is an unnecessary step. But there's nothing wrong with it. If you feel like it helps them play more centered and they can control pitch better, do it. Absolutely. So James Stamp, going back to Stamp, I watched an interview with one of his students who is now retired himself, so this is a long time ago. But he talked about how there's a lot of misconceptions about mouthpiece buzzing. And one of them is that it's 1-to-1. Like the lip buzz and the mouthpiece buzz should be the same pitch. It shouldn't. Man, that is a struggle to get that to happen. So James Stamp, when he was teaching his students, he would tell them, from what I understand, the lip buzz that corresponds to the mouthpiece buzz should be an octave lower, or much lower, if not an octave, like a fifth. So if I don't change my lips and I don't change my tongue, the corresponding lip buzz is much lower, which is a way to check and see if you're the problem is you have to get them to try to lip buzz so you can hear the pitch. But maybe your more advanced students could try this just as an exercise. You mouthpiece buzz and then take the mouthpiece off and leave it the same and see what lip buzz comes out. Like it's a lower pitch. If it's the same pitch, they're super tight. If it's close to the same pitch, they're probably pretty tight too. So that's the danger with mouthpiece buzzing. The other thing is you can't always be sure on mouthpiece buzzing that the tone is acceptable. You can have a pretty weird or a pretty decent sounding mouthpiece buzz that does not translate to the trumpet very well. So I think that has to do with tension in the middle more than anything. So does that answer that question?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yes.
A
Are there any certain skills when you taught beginning trumpet class daily that you wanted your class to have or demonstrate to you before you let them take their instruments home for independent practice? And if so, what were they?
That's a great question. I would not. The last thing I want to do is stifle a kid's interest in what they're doing. I was that kid. I got my instrument. I begged my parents, please, can we, on the instrument tryout day in the summer, can we please take the instrument home, or even buy one? They weren't going to. I was super sad. But my parents said, ooh, I'm getting choked up thinking about this. I don't know why that choked me up. That was a financial struggle for them to do that, and I was very excited to do that. So I went home, and I knew a little bit from some piano lessons. So I played through the entire beginner book before the first day of band. I mean, I'm sure, I can't imagine what it sounded like. It probably wasn't great. But I knew what a trumpet should sound like, and that's a really important concept. Your students need to know what a professional level trumpet player sounds like so that they can emulate what they're doing, imitate what they're doing. I grew up listening to movie soundtracks, and some of the ones that stick out in my mind are Star Wars, Willow. Anybody know the movie Willow? Yeah. Wow, what a great soundtrack. James Horner, I think. Superman. what great trumpet playing. And so those sounds were in my head. I mean, I knew what a trumpet was supposed to sound like. So if a student realizes that and they're trying to imitate that, that can take care of a lot of issues. Because how often do you have a student that seems like they don't know what they sound like? It's like, dude, do you know? And then you try to convince them that it needs to improve in some way or change some way. It's really hard to do. But if they have a concept of what this trumpet should sound like, it takes care of a lot of things already. So listening is really important, and they're not going to do that unless you do it in the class. So I would really advise watching videos or listening to recordings like as they're getting ready, or even have some active listening sessions where you spend time in class, you listen, and then you discuss and say, what do you hear? What do they sound like? What do you think they're doing to create those kinds of sounds? And usually the kids can teach you. They know at that point what they need to be doing. So as far as like telling them don't take your instrument home, I didn't have like a hard line like when we do this, you take your instrument home. Except probably I would say just do what we're doing in class. And when we're starting out, maybe don't get ahead too much. But at the same time, I was that kid that wanted to go home and experience. And they're going to do it either way. So if they want to. Yes?
As I've listened to you talk about the setup, I'm thinking of one student that I currently have who plays to the side.
Uh-huh. So,
yeah.
Sorry.
I imagine that's going to at some point limit their ability to progress from the, what do we do?
It could. It could also not. There are some really good players who play professionally who have great range, flexibility, sound, who play on the slightly to the side. If it's really extreme, I might try to inch that more towards the center if
I
possible.
reckon it's between the middle, of the middle and the pitch.
Yeah, what comes to mind is maybe like if the left side of the rim is past the middle point of the lips, it'd probably be good to start moving that gradually. And I would not just reset. You could try that. They might be able to do it. But they're going to feel real uncomfortable. What I've done whenever I start playing off to the side, in college this happened to me, probably because I was just using way too much pressure. I noticed that in the practice rooms up here at WT, they have mirrors in them. And I was just like, oh, wow, it looks stupid. And so I was embarrassed, and I started moving it for that reason. But it actually brought functionality to my playing a little bit better. But at the same time, the left-right is less important than the up-down. So if things are working, maybe don't mess with it. If sound is struggling, or flexibility is struggling, or range, maybe start encouraging them to kind of eke that back over. But I'll show you this with the visualizer. Lynn Nicholson, you know Lynn Nicholson? Travis knows everybody. Or knows everybody.
I don't know personally.
Yeah, well, I wish I did.
It is.
So Lynn Nicholson, lead trumpet player, he played with Maynard and several other big things, but that's kind of one of his big claims to fame. But he has a video where he talks about the anchor point is what he calls it, and he actually shows his teeth. And I'm going to show my teeth and whatever, embarrassing, if it needs to. The anchor point is where the rim will sit comfortably on the teeth. So wherever that is, and I can't see, so that you can see that opening between the teeth inside of there. And that's where the rim likes to sit on my face. Well, mostly trumpet players will find that natural because they're just finding what's the most comfortable thing. They're going to kind of center that on something that's comfortable. So we want the rim to be sitting as flat on the teeth as possible. So we get that going on. Yes?
Have these steps that you've introduced, did they generally prevent you having to like have kids put the shank between the teeth to open up?
No, I still use any method or trick or tip, and anything that you've ever seen. I would still definitely use those as needed, and I would too. I mean, this whole thing is not foolproof. It's what this really is a way to keep everyone in a large class setting doing the same things, where we're all doing this right now, and this is like here's the general procedure, and then we individually go around all the time. Like we're getting individuals and going, you try it. Okay, show me. Okay, change this a little bit. All right, yeah, that's it. You go to the next one, and you're doing that large group and then small group, like the Russ Tubelite method of dealing with keeping kids involved as much as possible. But I would definitely use any trick that works, and there are times where they start closing things down. Things will get out of whack progressively. It's not like once it's fixed forever kind of thing.
2 things. 1, we have 5 minutes left. 2, there's an online question. Most common question I see in Facebook groups about 20 times every year. My brass players are stuck on their lowest note. What do I tell them to get up to their next partial? Like trumpets from C to G.
Okay, great question. So if everything's working properly, which it's not if that's happening, then I would say first make sure the air is freely moving through the instrument. That's the most important thing. So we want that straight line approach. And you can check that with the straw. And you can pull the straw out while you're doing it and keep everything the same. If there's anything that's like kind of damming up the river, so to speak, then they're not going to have any success anyways. So that's the first thing I would check, is just make sure air is getting through. So to move up, like we talked about earlier, it kind of goes back to the fundamentals of playing the instrument. The air stays steady. Maybe there's a little push of the air. I don't know. And then the tongue rises. And when that happens, the air will go faster. And if the lips are relaxed and receiving the air, then the note should go up. Okay. And I'm just going. I'm really not thinking about changing anything here. I'm really not thinking about changing my air. I'm just making sure there's enough air to support what's going on. And the air's got to be enough that it's moving forward to where it's higher pressure here and lower pressure out there. So it's always going this direction. When students go higher, this is something that I thought of the other day. When the note goes higher, we have more resistance, and the student's inclination is to back off on the air and kind of give up. Oh, that got hard, so they just give up. Well, they don't have enough energy to drive things forward. So they've got to make sure that the air is always moving forward, and that's a support issue. It's sustaining that exhale, going back to that idea. So that we're sustaining the exhale as we're going up. I hope that answers the question. Faster air is usually the key, but the faster air is a result sometimes of the valve shape. Sometimes it's just they're not blowing enough air. Sometimes there's not a straight line getting the air through the lips. Okay. Yes?
What mouthpiece do you start your beginners on, and then as they progress, do you see fit for them to change to a different mouthpiece?
Usually we would start on a 5B. I really don't think there's a wrong answer if you're doing like 5B, 5C, 7C, something in that range. I like the 5B because you get, little lips doing something new. They've got the opportunity to kind of like have some wiggle room. As they're getting up into like more advanced playing, I could play the same range on this giant mouthpiece. This is like a 1 1/4 C. It's actually a Hammond design, but it's about a 1 1/4 C with an extra large throat. I've got the same range that I do on my lead trumpet mouthpiece that I'm going to play tonight in the jazz band. But you get more bang for your buck and more efficiency out of a smaller mouthpiece. So your high school students, you could move to like a 3C or something, it's kind of middle of the road where they're not struggling as much with endurance. But I don't really play the mouthpiece game a whole lot because I tend to think in terms of like the mechanics of playing the instrument, or if those aren't working, then the mouthpiece is not going to solve that problem. But if you've got an advanced student who's ready to kind of move on to the next step, you can start experimenting with that. Yes?
So So you never say the word buzz your lips, ever, ever, ever. But if they're blowing the right air, forming the right mouth, doing the tongue position correctly, that's gonna happen on its own.
It should, yeah. If the lips are supple, if they're close together, they should work like saloon doors. So if there's no vibration happening, either they're too tense, or they're too open, or they're too pressed together. So if they're in a good position and air is applied, they will vibrate because of the resistance of the tube. But I think of them as being saloon doors. When the air happens, they never overlap, and they never are too far apart. They're always kind of touching when they're in that closed position, and then as the air blows, things open, and as they're oscillating, they're doing this. So, does that answer the question? Yeah. I avoid saying buzz because that introduces tension for a lot of students. If they're still struggling and they just need to get a sound and experience some success, because they're frustrated and it's been weeks and they can't get something happening, you got to do what you can do and then fix it after that, maybe. That's where you got to think of the kid. And maybe your approach is not communicating, or they're not understanding the communication you're presenting, so you have to come at it a different way.
Are you available to stay for a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, so if you have individual questions, I'm going to have you come ask him. Since I didn't see you this morning, two things. One, if you have feedback on the warm-ups we read in Reading Band, somehow the collaborative copy disappeared. So I got flute, I got trumpet, I got percussion. If you were on another instrument and there was a typo or a problem, if you can please let me know, because I want to make sure those are good when I send them to you for you to use for your kids. 145, on page 10 of the faculty folder that I emailed out to you the day before camp, I think it was, page 10 has probably 30 to 40 elective choices. So you can go observe at 145. I am going to do my clinic in here at 1:30 on the fundamentals of beginning band, but you can always watch that online, so, it's a great chance to go watch something different. And then please be back in here, though, at 2:20, 2:25 at the latest, to do the box. Mr. Hardin has driven in from Abilene, and he's going to do a clinic for us on concert cycle, choosing literature, and how to kind of macro planning of your whole year of literature. So please make sure you're back for that. So you're going to probably observe for about 30 minutes at 1:45. Okay? Any questions? All right.
How are the jazz concerts working this evening?
How are the jazz concerts working?
I believe the high school jazz band 1 is in the Northern Recital Hall at 7, and then it's followed by Director's Jazz Band, which John Techmeyer is going to play again.
So you'll want to go to Northern Recital Hall. Yeah.
Well, I want to see the kids, so I go for that.
Oh, then yeah, if you have kids, then you probably want to go to the Legacy, right? Legacy, if you're watching students.
Or is it the BIT? I don't know.
Look in
Sorry.
the faculty folder. I can try to find out by 2:30. Okay. All right. Thank
Yeah,
you to
I think-
Mr.
I
Lough.
think
Great to meet you.
Please come and get goodies. I've got